Marc Carney, a well-respected economist and former central banker, has just been elected as the new leader of Canada's Liberal Party. With this victory, he is now set to replace Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister. Before stepping into politics, Carney built an impressive career in finance. He served as the head of the Bank of Canada from 2008 to 2013, guiding the country through one of the worst financial crises in modern history. Later, he made history by becoming the first non-British governor of the Bank of England, a role he held from 2013 to 2020, navigating challenges like Brexit. Carney wasn't afraid to speak his mind on global issues. In 2018, while leading the Bank of England, he took a firm stance against then U.S. President Donald Trump's trade policies, warning that tariffs could disrupt economies around the world. But before diving into his past battles with Trump, let's look at his fiery speech last night, one that left no room for doubt about where Canada stands. After securing leadership of the Liberal Party with a staggering 85.9% of the vote, Carney stood before the nation and made one thing clear: Canada is its own country, and that will never change. His words carried a sharp response to recent comments from U.S. President Donald Trump, who suggested that Canada could one day become America's 51st state. Carney wasn't having any of it. America is not Canada, and Canada will never be part of America, ever, he declared. But he didn't stop there. Drawing on Canada's deep-rooted hockey culture, he used a fitting analogy. We didn't ask for this fight, but when someone drops the gloves, Canadians are always ready. Carney also sounded the alarm on what he believes are U.S. ambitions to exploit Canada's land and resources. The Americans want what we have: our water, our forests, our country. If we let them take it, they will destroy everything that makes us who we are. His leadership comes at a critical time. Tensions between Canada and the U.S. have reached new heights, with Trump slapping a hefty 25% tariff on Canadian goods, putting thousands of jobs at risk. Carney isn't backing down. He has made it clear that Canada will hit back with equal force, imposing tariffs of its own until the U.S. treats Canada fairly. Beyond trade disputes, Carney is looking to shift Canada's economic focus. He's pushing for stronger ties with other global partners, reducing reliance on the U.S., and ensuring that Canada's future isn't dictated by American policies. Throughout his campaign, he laid out his approach in blunt terms. "We will keep our tariffs in place until the Americans show us the respect we deserve," he said, showing no signs of compromise. He has never been shy about calling out Trump's economic policies, and he's not stopping now. Donald Trump is attacking Canada's workers, businesses, and families with unfair trade barriers, he stated. He wants to weaken us. We won't let him. And when it comes to the idea of Canada becoming part of the U.S., Carney shut it down completely. Canada will never, ever be annexed. With tensions rising and trade battles looming, he had one final message for Canadians: when we stand together, we are unstoppable. Marc Carney isn't pulling any punches when it comes to protecting Canada. He's made it clear that the country's resources, economy, and way of life won't be handed over to foreign powers, especially not the U.S. He warned that if America gets its way, everything Canadians hold dear could be at risk. From the start of his campaign, he laid out a tough plan to push back against unfair U.S. trade policies, vowing to keep tariffs in place until America starts treating Canada with respect. "We're not backing down," he insisted. "Our tariffs stay until they do the right thing." He's also been blunt in his criticism of former U.S. President Donald Trump, accusing him of trying to cripple Canada's economy. "Trump has slapped unfair tariffs on our products, making it harder for us to do business. He's hurting Canadian workers, families, and companies," Carney stated. "We're not going to let him get away with it." Then there was Trump's wild idea of turning Canada into America's 51st state. Carney shut that down instantly. "Canada will never, ever be annexed," he declared, making sure there was no room for doubt. Throughout his career, he has emphasized the importance of standing strong as a nation, calling for Canadians to come together and push back against outside pressure. "When we stand united, we are unstoppable," he said. Born on March 16, 1965, in Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, Carney grew up in Edmonton, Alberta. His parents, both teachers, raised him with a deep appreciation for knowledge and hard work. He carried that drive with him to Harvard University, where he earned an economics degree in 1988, and later continued his studies at the University of Oxford, earning both a master's and a doctorate in economics. His career started at Goldman Sachs, one of the world's top financial firms, where he worked in cities like Boston, London, New York, Tokyo, and Toronto, handling everything from government debt to emerging markets. He played a key role in major financial events, including helping South Africa rejoin global markets after the end of apartheid and navigating the fallout from Russia's financial collapse in 1998. By 2003, he made the jump to Canada's central bank, quickly climbing the ranks. A year later, he moved to the Department of Finance, where he was instrumental in selling Canada's stake in Petro-Canada, a deal that brought in billions. In 2008, he became the governor of the Bank of Canada, just as the global financial crisis hit. His response was bold. He cut interest rates early and kept them low, helping Canada recover faster than many other countries. His approach was widely praised, and it wasn't long before Britain took notice. In 2013, he made history by becoming the first non-British governor of the Bank of England. His tenure was marked by efforts to modernize the institution and navigate the economic fallout of Brexit, one of the biggest financial shakeups in UK history. Even after leaving the Bank of England, Carney remained a key figure in global finance. He worked as the United Nations Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance, pushing for policies that would encourage sustainable investment. One of his biggest concerns was the overwhelming influence of the US dollar on the global economy. In August 2019, at the Jackson Hole Symposium, he argued that the world was too dependent on American currency and that this imbalance was slowing down global growth. He pointed out that even as emerging economies became more powerful, the US dollar still dominated international trade. The world has changed, but the dollar's grip hasn't, he noted. He backed up his argument with hard facts. While the US makes up only a small fraction of global trade, its currency is used in over half of international transactions. This, he warned, was a recipe for instability, forcing other countries into low interest rates and sluggish growth. His solution was a push for a more balanced financial system, where no single currency holds too much power. Marc Carney didn't just observe the financial system, he challenged it. He pointed out that the world's reliance on the US dollar had created a deep imbalance, leaving many countries vulnerable whenever the American economy shifted. When the US experiences a boom or a slowdown, the effects don't just stay within its borders. Interest rate hikes, inflation spikes, or recessions send shockwaves through international markets, disrupting trade, investments, and economic stability across the globe. This, he explained, happens because the dollar isn't just America's currency. It's the backbone of the world's financial system. Countries everywhere depend on it for trade, borrowing, and storing wealth. In fact, even though the US accounts for only a fraction of global imports, its currency is used in about half of all international transactions. This puts other nations in a difficult position. They can't fully control their own economies because they're constantly reacting to what happens in the US. Carney warned that this setup wasn't just inconvenient, it was dangerous. Smaller nations in particular struggle to protect themselves from sudden shifts in the US economy. If American interest rates rise, borrowing becomes more expensive for everyone. If the dollar strengthens, imports become costlier for countries using weaker currencies. Even when these nations make responsible financial decisions, they can still be caught in the ripple effects of choices made in Washington. But Carney didn't just talk about the problem, he offered solutions. He suggested that the global economy needed a major shift away from its dollar-centered system. Instead of relying so heavily on one currency, the world should move toward a more balanced financial structure where multiple currencies share the load. One idea he floated was the development of a new international currency, possibly built on a network of digital currencies issued by central banks. This system could provide an alternative to the dollar, allowing global trade and finance to be more evenly distributed. It wouldn't replace the dollar overnight, but over time, it could reduce America's outsized influence on the global economy and make financial markets more stable. Carney wasn't the only one thinking about this shift. History has shown that no currency remains dominant forever. He pointed out that the world had seen similar transitions before, and there was no reason to believe the dollar's reign would last forever. He urged policymakers to acknowledge the challenges of this outdated system and start planning for a future where financial power is more evenly spread. In the short term, he also suggested practical steps that could help countries protect themselves. He pushed for an expansion of the International Monetary Fund's financial resources so that struggling economies wouldn't have to stockpile massive amounts of US dollars just to guard against crises. If the IMF had greater liquidity, it could step in and offer financial support when nations needed it most, reducing their dependence on the American economy. Carney's message was clear. The world had long accepted US dollar dominance as a fact of life, but it was time to rethink that assumption. The financial system wasn't just a product of history, it could be reshaped. By encouraging an open conversation about alternatives, he hoped to push global leaders toward a fairer, more stable system that didn't leave entire nations at the mercy of one country's economic ups and downs. Let's take a quick moment. If you're enjoying the video, a small action from you can make a big difference. Tapping the like button helps more people find this content, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your support means a lot. Thank you. Now, let's get back to it. When Marc Carney was at the helm, the growing unpredictability of US trade policies became a pressing concern for financial markets worldwide. While he rarely called out Donald Trump by name, it was no secret that he was uneasy about the escalating tensions fueled by US actions. He pointed out that trade disputes weren't just causing short-term disruptions. They were driving a wave of economic nationalism and protectionist policies in multiple countries. In July 2018, as Trump ramped up tariffs on trade partners and China, Carney delivered some of his strongest remarks yet. Speaking at an event in Newcastle, he painted a grim picture of the deteriorating state of global trade. Though he didn't directly mention Trump, his message was clear. These policies were already causing economic damage. He noted that, so far, much of the volatility stemmed from heated debates and social media threads, an unmistakable nod to Trump's frequent tariff-related tweets. But he warned that if things kept going in this direction, the consequences would be serious. The risk wasn't just talk, it was growing by the day. He cautioned that if uncertainty over trade policies continued to rise, it could trigger an economic downturn and tighten financial conditions worldwide. And if a full-blown trade war erupted, even the U.S. wouldn't escape the fallout. Central banks, he explained, could only do so much to soften the blow. Widespread tariffs would cause a shock too big for monetary policy to fix. A worldwide trade war wouldn't have just minor consequences. It could deal a significant hit to global economies, including the UK, and the U.S. Carney didn't shy away from pushing back against Trump's claim that trade wars were easy to win. On the contrary, he made it clear that if the U.S. kept escalating trade disputes, it would ultimately pay the highest price. This bold statement was widely reported at the time and was essentially Carney warning Trump that America had the most to lose if trade tensions spiraled out of control. His stance aligned with economic experts who argued that no country ever truly wins in a trade war. He pointed to research from the International Monetary Fund, which showed that both the US and China were suffering financially from their ongoing tariff battle. As tensions continued to escalate in 2019, Carney became even more vocal. By mid-year, he warned that global trade uncertainty had reached extreme levels. He cautioned that if things continued on the same course, the world economy could face serious consequences. Even after Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping agreed to restart negotiations at the G20 summit, Carney remained skeptical. Just because things look good today doesn't mean they'll stay that way, he remarked in July 2019, reminding investors that a temporary truce didn't mean lasting stability. He pointed out that the damage had already been done. Business confidence had taken a hit, global investment had slowed, and uncertainty had settled in like a thick fog over financial markets. He understood these patterns well, having led the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England through times of economic turbulence. His approach to financial crises was always based on data and solid economic principles. favoring careful, calculated measures over rash decisions. But Trump's leadership style made the situation far more unpredictable. With his tendency for abrupt policy changes and aggressive rhetoric, he introduced a level of instability that even the best economic strategies couldn't entirely account for. As tensions between the U.S. and Canada continued to grow, it was clear that the interactions between these two leaders would not be simple. Carney would likely approach the situation with logic and measured responses, focused on keeping financial markets stable. Trump, on the other hand, was more unpredictable, increasing the risk of diplomatic and economic strain. How this clash would unfold remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: the stakes were high for both economies. What's your take on this? Let us know in the comments below. That's it for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we truly appreciate you spending your time with us. If you appreciated the VIDE, please comment, subscribe to our channel, and activate the notification bell.